March the 10th, 2026. Guys, quick update on the situation in the Middle East. Now, for maybe a couple of different reasons combined, the price of oil per barrel has come back down, $10, $15 a barrel in some cases. Now, it still needs to drop some more. We're in the 80s and 90s. When this started, we were around $61, $62 for the low earlier in the year. But guys, again, the price is coming down and not going up, and that's a good sign. But if you remember yesterday, if anybody watched it, Pete Hegseth said that today would be the most severe day of bombing since the war began. Now, something has really got them going. I know they've reelected the Ayatollah's youngest son, I think it is, to replace him. Someone said, or someone in an article said, that he had already been wounded. And Trump's not very happy about it because he was trying to get the Iranian people out from under the mullahs and get someone in there like the ex-president or somebody that is going to be fair to the citizens and make the country prosper and not be a terrorist state spreading it worldwide. And I've mentioned this before, but in the comments, every once in a while, someone will say, just name one war that Iran has started. And you kind of want to slap your head over the stupid comment because you don't realize when you say that the Houthis, Hamas, and Hezbollah are Iranian warriors. They're proxy armies. So Iranian mullahs can sit there until now safe and sound and send the people that are stupid enough to listen to them out to battle and sit back, well, we didn't do it, but we know better than that, so guys, wake up. That's just a couple of y'all that do that out of the thousands that watch the videos. But I'm saying this as basically a history lesson. So today is the highest day of bombardment, the most powerful day that's going on there. If you think about how we look at it, remember the time difference between Tehran and New York City this time of the year, daylight savings times, it's 7.5 hours difference. We're behind, or the East Coast is behind Tehran 7.5 hours. They don't do daylight savings time like we do. Anyway, so that has been going on for a little bit. And we don't know how that's going to come out. I'm sure we're going to start getting reports on it very soon. But there's, you've got best case scenarios, worst case scenarios on how this can come out. Right now, the good sign is that the markets are reacting to some of the statements from our president. And that is, he's going to, if he has to, one of them was that he will let the U.S. control the straits. And then you remember yesterday I mentioned the Pearl of the Persian Gulf and that small island there that is 8 or 90% of Iranians' exports go through that terminal on that island 15 miles offshore there. And so there's a couple of different control mechanisms, not only the strait itself, but further north up into the Persian Gulf with this island. But they're saying that the Hormuz Straits are still effectively closed, and also that a handful have turned their transponders off, their locators, and eased through there. And they've allowed a few Chinese flagged vessels to go through because they're friendly with China. Now, we talked about this being a big chessboard, and that's a shame in a way because human lives are involved. But one of the moves that we are seeing was the takedown of Maduro, because we're getting oil and tons of gold from there, in Venezuela. Also, yesterday Trump mentioned that he was going to ease up the Russian restrictions of the oil flow into Europe and other places in that area. In other words, when the Ukrainian conflict started, I think some of the rhinos pressured Trump into doing this. He wasn't that crazy about getting involved in it. It was just a pressure point from most of the swamp because they were behind the Ukrainian counterfeit state because they could embezzle and they could launder so much money through there and back to the Democratic Party and to whoever. But anyway, so By Trump saying, I'm going to ease the sanctions on Russia's oil exports to these other nations, that also brought the price down, right? Here comes another supply point. So things are going good in that instance. The major shipping firms have still suspended most of their operations, the tanker traffic, and again, Iran is currently only permitting Chinese vessels to pass. Multiple merchant ships and tankers have been struck by missiles or drones, and then they name a few of these. But a lot of these that they're naming, Skylight, Stena Imperative, and the Senegal, Namibia, were hit in the early sections of the war. And I think that a lot of that traffic has kind of slowed down. Now, the Goofy Trophy award of the century goes to the shipping, cruise shipping industry. We have... In the Persian Gulf, there are 6 cruise ships that were fully loaded with people cruising through there days before the war started. Guys, the whole world knew this was about to happen. But you've got, obviously, 15,000 clueless, well, I'm going to say it, foolish people. Okay? That's as nice as I can say it. And they all share, in this Goofy award. Because if you're dumb enough to do it, it's like you play stupid games, you get stupid prizes. But really it falls back to, and there may be litigation before it's all said and done, on the cruise ship lines themselves, guys. I guess they presented it as a safe voyage with, I mean, what can you say? I guess money talks. I don't know how they ended up there knowing this was about to go down. Well, what that does is like people getting out driving in the snow and ice, and then the first responders have to try to come out and risk their lives to save you. Same thing with when you have to get military escorts, get people out of there and everything else. The ships are stranded, and I hope that the cruise lines lose millions of dollars on those stranded vessels just to teach them a lesson. Maybe they won't let it happen again. But really, if they're that stupid, maybe they don't need to be in business, period. Money and everything. If you got enough money to build a cruise ship, doesn't mean you got enough sense to keep it out of war. Now, I think in retaliation for what, again, Pete Hegseth said, and he was sure he's following Trump's orders, was this is going to be the greatest day of bombing, both by them and Israel, the Iranians responded because they've taken down about 29 drones and missiles that were coming at the UAE today and other places, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait. They have reported shooting down incoming drones over the oil-rich regions and urban centers. Bahrain, a residential building, and Manama was hit, resulting in civilian casualties. In the UAE, intercepted dozens of missiles and drones, reports of at least 6 deaths and a fire at the Ruwais petrochemical plant. And so they're lashing back out. According to our military, that they're about 20% is all they have left of their munitions. They have depleted about 80%, let me put it that way. And so they're down to some basics, but they're still concerned of possibly hidden nuclear weapons. And remember, Russia has been involved with their intelligence. But with Trump easing some of the Russian sanctions on oil exports, they may back off from that a little also. I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see. And President Trump has warned of massive retaliation if oil flows remain blocked, while U.S. and Israeli forces continue strikes on Iranian missile production and leadership targets. Brent crude oil prices, they had surged, peaking at $126. That may have been for that Marlboro. But anyway, per barrel, before fluctuating around $90 to $100 as markets react to instability. Now, they've come down. Now they're in the $90 and $80 range, and that what's called the champagne oil of the Middle East that they use for jet fuel, that is closer to $100 when it was skyrocketing yesterday also. It says the global spare oil capacity is extremely low, and the prolonged closure of the Gulf is leading to rapid erosion of global oil inventories. Now, there's an update coming in on the attacks in the last 24 hours there. We talked about some of this, but again, the UAE has intercepted 8 ballistic missiles, 26 drones on today alone. One Iranian drone struck and hit the industrial city of Ruwais, and we talked about that. Caused a fire at the petrochemical plant. And in Bahrain, an Iranian missile or drone hit a residential building in the capital of Manama, killing a 29-year-old woman and wounding 8 others. Now, in Kuwait, the National Guard have reported they've shot down 6 drones targeting the country's northern and southern areas. Saudi Arabia Defense Forces destroyed 2 drones over the oil-rich eastern region. In Qatar, it has intercepted 17 Iranian ballistic missiles. Now, we're seeing more drone attacks, but they still obviously have ballistic missiles, maybe some more powerful than that, because we've seen some of the large ones explode over Tel Aviv with multiple warheads. It looks like a bulk carrier has come under attack today off the coast of the UAE. The captain has reported a splash and a loud bang nearby. In other words, it sounds like a missile missed it. But that would bring in quite a frenzy into the war. You start blowing up these vessels there, then it's going to be on, and you think that today would be a bad bombing day. That would bring it in. It would shut down Iran, I'm afraid. But how would that conflict spread? Would that be the hook in the jaw? They're saying we got approximately 1,000 vessels, including nearly 100 oil tankers, are currently anchored or loitering outside the strait, unable or unwilling to transit due to the Iranian threats. And what that represents, guys, is a 94 to 99% collapse in volume, not moving out. Normally they get 138 to 160 vessels through the strait daily. Again, some ships are attempting to cross by switching off their AIS transponders. That's worked in a handful of cases, but you're still dealing with insurance and possibility of getting your ship blown up and losing your crew. They're saying the U.S./Israel combined force is systematically targeting Iran's ballistic missile infrastructure, drone launch sites, and internal security institutions in Tehran and western provinces. And this was confirmed by Israel also. I saw a video early this morning of an Israeli officer. He spoke very good English. He was on an interview, and he backed this up. He said, we are going after their capabilities of reproducing missiles, the manufacturing, more than we are going after the missiles themselves, because they're getting low, and if they can't make them, they're going to be out very quickly. The coalition has reportedly established effective control of the airspace from western Iran to central Tehran after degrading approximately 200 Iranian air defense systems. Tehran experienced some of its heaviest bombardment overnight, with reports of at least 40 people killed near the city's Risalat Square. U.S. officials claim that 75% of Iran's missile launchers have been destroyed, leading up to 90% reduction in the volume of the Iranian missile launches over the last 24 hours. And both sides are focusing on their manufacturing capabilities and their launch vehicles and everything else they see. And Iran's doing everything it can to hide a lot of these missile launching trucks. Some are pretty big, but we're seeing drones go up under bridges, things like that, and take these things out that they think are hidden. So it's pretty, I mean, we saw that at the beginning of the Ukrainian-Russia conflict also. But it says, again, that you're talking about 75% of Iran's missile launchers have been destroyed, leading to a 90% reduction of the volume of Iranian missile launches over the last 24 hours. That's a good sign. There is concern, I'm going to say it again, of some type of hidden, maybe super weapon, some are naming it. That's not what I'm calling it, but it could be that they are holding for like a last-minute ditch effort before they lose everything. Now, in response to this, guys, Tehran is vowing to use their big missiles because of the intent strikes today. And they've been very powerful. Again, the worst that they've seen. and they're vowing to use their large weapons. So we're kind of in an important 24-hour period here. It says Israel is simultaneously intensifying strikes in southern Lebanon against Hezbollah, who joined the war on March the 2nd. And again, but Iran is innocent. They don't start foreign wars. That's a message for the ignorant. New leadership following the assassination of Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei on the first day of the war. His son, Mojtaba Khamenei, they said he couldn't even get a girlfriend. And that it's in the will of the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei to not ever let him become his successor, in his will. But he's been named that, and I've heard he's been wounded. And guys, what does that tell you? That they're not interested in anything the Ayatollah Khamenei used to say before he was taken out. And that they don't want to put one of their Iranian generals up for the next target of the U.S. So here, let's give you this kid, basically. And he had some major problems, and his dad wouldn't even let him be in any type of political power. So you see the game there. Get him out of the way and let him take the heat while we keep shooting missiles. Trump has suggested the war may end very soon. Defense Secretary Hexeth stated the U.S. will not relent until the enemy is totally and decisively defeated. They want the end of that mullah regime. And I mentioned about oil dropping and a couple of the reasons, and there's some more information coming in. Again, the Trump de-escalation comments that Trump is talking about, proposed control of the strait. Markets react to Trump's suggestion the U.S. may take over to ensure the free flow of energy. Also, strategic reserve releases. The G7 nations held a virtual meeting to discuss a coordinated release of strategic oil reserves to stabilize the market. So you got the G7 doing it. You got Russia getting sanctions off their back so they can push more oil through. And that's mentioned here. The Trump administration indicated it might consider reducing oil sanctions. I think they did, and that's one of the things that's happened. Quick production recovery. Saudi Aramco CEO Armin Nassar assured analysts the company would ramp up production in days and not weeks. Once the straits are open, he said. They can't do anything. There's no use in producing oil and gas if it can't go anywhere. Their tanks are probably full, so they've just ramped everything down until the straits are cleared. Now, I'm sure that message is very clear with our president. And he's got his hands full, guys. With this, you got Venezuela, Cuba's in a crisis. But I think the biggest thing that we're looking at right now is someone's Senator John Thune, not mine, but him blocking the SAVE Act. It's the most important bill ever presented to the U.S. Political realm. And it's got to happen. So you've got to realize in your states, find out if you've got rhino senators. We know the Dems are not going to vote for it, except I think maybe one. But anyway, find out if your Republican rhino senators are voting for the SAVE Act. If not, you need to get on the phone with them daily basis to their offices and let them know. Get your friends to do it too, because this is an attempt to save this nation. If it does not pass, and Thune needs to go straight to jail and then somewhere else right after that, but this needs to go through. It's important. Again, get with the people in your area, get them all to call. If you care about this nation, you care about what's going to happen, you got to get this bill passed. So call them. We're going to make sure that Roger Wicker here in the state is behind it. We're going to do everything we can as far as political pressure. I'm not talking about threatening anyone. That's the Antifa way of doing it, the Democratic way. We're talking about doing it the smart way, making the calls, talk about the groups are not going to be behind anybody that does not pass the SAVE Act. And we want to know why. Why would you not want to have legal, legit voting? What are you hiding? Regardless of who you're dealing with, right? And that list is coming out. Some of the lists that I've seen of Republicans that are for it and Republicans that are not for it are very deceiving. One of them and it's from a pretty big media outlet, is saying that our senator in Louisiana, John Kennedy, is anti-SAVE Act, but he's the one leading the charge for it. So the information that's coming through is very misleading, and that's a telltale sign of who's behind a lot of this catastrophe. And it wouldn't be so bad if the borders hadn't been open for 4 years, releasing possibly hundreds of thousands of people into sleeper cells that are tied into the conflict we're seeing presently in the Persian Gulf. Now also, guys, researchers around the planet are looking at the best and worst case scenarios. The worst case, they're saying, in a conflict of the scale involving global superpowers in the world's most sensitive energy corridor, the worst case scenario moves beyond regional instability into a global systematic collapse. What do collapses mean? Normally war. Said if Iran perceives its regional survival is at stake, and they're perceiving it pretty strongly right now, is they're due to U.S. and Israeli strikes, it could rush to deploy a breakout nuclear weapon. Where are they getting that information? Anyway, the result, a direct nuclear exchange between Israel and Iran. This would result in millions of immediate casualties, permanent radioactive contamination of the Middle East, and total collapse of the regional order. That's very true, but that would be one of the triggers we talked about a few days ago. A lot of people getting killed to pull all the nations in by that hook in Ezekiel against Israel. Now they're talking about a possible scorched earth policy that Iran executes, calling it a global energy Pearl Harbor. It says if they execute this policy in the Persian Gulf using advanced mines and suicide drones to permanently damage Saudi and the Emirates' oil infrastructure and the Strait of Hormuz seabed. How would that happen? Because you've got a lot of pipelines going through that area. Oil prices would spike to $250 per barrel. This would trigger a global Great Depression worse than 2008, causing mass food shortages, hyperinflation, and the collapse of transportation sectors worldwide. Says the scenario would be China, which relies on the Persian Gulf for the majority of the energy, intervenes to protect its interests, the kings of the East moving in. Simultaneously, Russia could use the distraction to escalate in Europe. Now, it's not escalating anything in Europe. It's trying to take Ukraine back because the people that took Ukraine abused the Russian citizens that were still there. And that group of people was John McCain and Barack Obama. All of that group. They remember Biden saying, I told them to fire the DA that was looking into the corrupt oil scheme going on there, or they would lose the contract, and then he bragged on live TV that they did it. Man, these politicians, they really amaze me. Continues, it says the conflict expands from a regional war into a multi-theater global war between NATO and Russia-Chinese-Iranian bloc, moving the world into a state of total mobilization. The total destruction of Iran's economy and infrastructure, combined with attacks on neighboring Gulf cities, leads to a mass exodus. The result, tens of millions of refugees fleeing toward Europe and Central Asia, as Europe is already overran. I don't know where you're going to go in Central Asia either. This is overwhelming international aid systems and destabilizing the political landscape of the European Union. They've done that to themselves already. This will just make it worse. But Europe has destroyed itself by electing very evil, demonic people, possessed more than likely. And that was the only reason for the 4 years of the open border, to drag the U.S. into the same mess that most of the world is in. It says prolonged war leads to the collapse of state control in the region, creating a vacuum similar to the post-2003 Iraqi area. But that would happen, guys, in a lot of regions. A resurgence of extremist groups like ISIS or Al-Qaeda using the chaos to seize territory or launch lone wolf attacks in Western cities as retaliation for the strikes on Iran. Thank you, Joe Biden, for 4 years of that. We appreciate it very much. But guys, that's the updates that I can find coming in right now. It's probably hell on earth for a lot of people in that area right now on both sides. War is not pretty. It's very ugly. But again, guys, we're watching it. That's all we can do right now. But we have to focus here, too. And we got to get the SAVE Act passed. It's a heads up. Be safe.